Global automotive supplier Marelli has an ambitious goal to become one of the world's five largest automotive suppliers. It's been a challenging time for the company, which, after changing hands, is now owned by the US private equity giant KKR. But talking to me about the company's future plans and the way forward is Dinesh Paliwal, the executive chairman of Marelli. Mr. Paliwal, hello, and thank you very much for this interview. So I just want to start off with, the current position of Marelli with regard to restructuring, debt, and other financial challenges. What's the way forward?
Hormazd, first of all, thank you very much for taking me on your program. I'm a huge fan. I read Autocar very regularly, and I've seen a few of the latest reviews you've done. My colleagues, Michael Mauser and Sachin Lawande, both worked for me at Harman.
Okay.
They're good friends, and I'm very proud of what they're doing. So thank you for being on your program. So back to Marelli. Look, Marelli went through a very challenging time. But I'm here to report that we have very successfully completed the financial restructuring in the month of August. It completed. That means additional investment from KKR and reduction in our bank debt. That was very important for me. If you can put the world's best CEO to run a company, but if you do not give them a strong balance sheet, you literally undermine their capability. So that was my commitment to the new CEO I brought in January 1. So Marelli is now in a strong financial position to take on innovation and invest. In addition, Hormazd, if I may, support from KKR, investing again, that's really a true testament to our exciting potential. In parallel, I can also tell you, I've learned a long time ago, in auto industry, if you're not a cost leader, you can never be an innovation and profit leader. So we have already pushed last year a permanent cost reduction program that would deliver annual recurring cost savings of $500 million. And that's almost 2/3 done. Lastly, David Slump, whom I know for 25 years. He worked for me in ABB in Switzerland and then for 15 years at Harman. He's a battle-tested executive. And he knows me, he knows automotive industry outside in. He has set a clear strategy, and he's laser focused on making Marelli competitive and innovative. They go hand in hand.
Right.
And I'm actually very excited, Hormazd, about the future of Marelli, strengthening our collaboration with customers and suppliers, investing in people and next generation technologies, and finally executing on $60 billion in order backlog. That's a pretty large number. That means a lot of trust global automakers have placed in us.
Right. So Mr. Paliwal, it's interesting. What you're saying is, now you're giving the company the money. Obviously, you need it. You need capex for development. You can't starve the company or go into some, cost-saving mode right now. So, given the fact that there is so much investment, what are the future plans in terms of technology? What are the focus areas? I understand lighting and sensing is amongst your largest businesses. So just to get a sense on, what the technology areas and focus areas will be.
Hormazd, as you have written plenty, and as I said, I've been reading a lot, and you have said very clearly, the automotive industry is going through the most disruptive change, in my opinion, as many as 100 years. It's a seismic shift. And really, the shift is towards electrification. That is enabling literally the reimagination of the vehicle design and architecture, right? That's where it all starts. That's also allowing us to focus on personalization and new services-oriented business models through software. I mean, everybody talks about software, but what does that mean? It means personalizing applications and services. So if you look at Marelli's history, Marelli's background, Marelli has strengths in vehicle performance and vehicle personality. You can look at it, we can design our portfolio in the two ways, two legs, performance and personality. And that's where David is focused, that we will help our customers differentiate their vehicles of the future based on. And here are the three things really come to my mind when you talk technology. I think if you look at Volkswagen, Toyota, General Motors, Tesla, the cars of the future would be software-defined cars. Digital twin, that's something might be new to auto industry, not new to me because I'm sitting on world's largest aerospace and defense company. And we use digital twin to expedite our development and testing. And we are bringing very aggressively digital twin technology to fast fail, learn very quickly what we develop, how do we test, how do we validate, and show it live to our customers. And then lastly, and the three things, cyber secured connectivity. Hormazd, we have heard plenty over the last 5 years, including myself. We need to have a connected car. Connected, you cannot have connected unless you have cyber secured car. And again, I'm talking about, we have in our portfolio numerous cybersecurity companies, including Barracuda and Optiv and many others. And that's all we are looking at, that whether you have a 4G or 5G, they're useless because you cannot use them to the fullest unless you have cybersecurity guarantees to me as a user. When you talk those
it's a major safety issue, isn't it? I mean,
major safety issue. I already talked about software-defined vehicles, and we talked about digital twin. We talked about cyber-secured connectivity. Then we get into the portfolio of Marelli. It is absolutely right. The lighting and sensing is the largest business of Marelli. Driver assistance, ADAS.
So will you be looking at higher levels of ADAS going forward, or do you think that's still some ways away and not? And it's even the environment also doesn't quite allow that. Going to 3 and maybe even I think 4 is a long way off, and 5, so we don't know when will happen.
Frankly, Hormazd, if you go back and see what I've said 5-7 years ago, I was very clear that a fully autonomous is really way out there. You can always have the secured lane in Austin, Texas, or some lanes in San Francisco or Munich, but I cannot see a separate lane like that in Taipei, in Bangkok, or in India. So right. These are very busy, congested metropolitan areas. So what is most important for me as a driver and you as a driver to avoid what happened recently, a lot of tragic accidents, is if we can bring level 0, 1, and 2 right. and make driver a better driver, give driver right. the knowledge which we don't have. We have right. a bad weather, we have instant things happening. Those things we need to avoid, and that's what we intend to do with LiDAR, radar, and other infrared sensors. So we have a 360 topography of the car available, being processed, and of course the gaze, the eye gaze sensor to detect if I'm tired, I'm being alerted, my seat is vibrating, the alarms, the audio, the video, all of those things are becoming commonplace, but they need to be totally integrated in the software design car. Right. And then, of course, Hormazd, Marelli's background is in interior. Almost 90% of the Nissan cars worldwide use Marelli bespoke interior. And of course, Magneti Marelli, which is now Marelli, was very well known for powertrain. That's ICE, a combustion engine powertrain, as well as e-powertrain, electronic powertrain. So we've invested heavily in e-motor, e-axle, power management. And once you have the e-powertrain, the thermal solution becomes important because there's no heat being generated to heat up the car and cooling. So we have a very well-defined thermal solution and for the electric vehicles. And of course, something which you have written a lot, HUD, head-up displays.
Yeah, HUD getting quite popular.
Exactly.
So they're democratized. Maruti now using them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a necessity. And I think every regulatory environment should mandate that, because I actually drive my cars with HUD all the time because that's my line of sight. Exactly. So HUD eventually will replace digital clusters.
That's what I want to
now they will coexist.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point which I want to talk to you about. Do you think HUD will replace the digital cluster? Because today it's the screens are getting bigger, more complex. Mercedes hyper screens, not just one screen. Now it's 3 screens. A lot of driver distraction. Or do you think it will take regulation at some point to kind of drive this change? Or do you think it'll just be what customers will prefer, or will manufacturers drive it? Because really, the jury is out there whether people are going to gravitate from these really massive screens to probably no screens and everything in the HUD, all the info in the HUD.
So, Hormazd, you're bringing a very good point. I think this is also practice and mental preparedness. I think this has to be mandated. HUD, head-up displays are as safe and as robust or even more than any analog or digital cluster. That's where you're going to have a regulatory environment allowing you to do that, even at the expense of too much information.
Right.
Look, I'm from my other board I sit on, we do 40% of the world's airlines digital cockpit. HUD is the key now. I talked to a lot of pilots. I was just visiting some West Coast facilities. Pilots use HUD. They're using HUD to land the plane, to take off, what have you. So HUD is becoming the technology to go to. So I believe eventually it will be the technology. It will replace digital cluster. And lastly, very important, we all talk about massive displays around. My personal vision 5-6 years ago was that I want to convert the car into IMAX theater. But
Right.
then I can take each windows, the front, the back, I can dedicate them. One could be just the gaming. One could be for the day trading. One could be my living room. I can watch movies. One is just the driver looking at or not looking at. But for that, you need OLED experience. And I
Right.
learned a few things when I worked for Samsung for 3-4 years. OLED is expensive, and very few cars can afford that. So that's
Right.
where comes the optical bonding, and you've written a lot about.
Yes.
We have
Yes.
2 factories right now just in a process of coming online. We'll produce our own optical bonding for displays. That would give us OLED-like experience, but at the fraction of the cost. So I think that's coming in a big way. And that would allow us to not only have the flat square display, but the curved displays we are already launching. Nissan is experiencing some of those. So through those technologies, I believe we'll have a very different experience in the car. And again, people like me, I'm a car buff and you are, we will have the renewed interest in getting in the car and spending more time in the car because I can use it productively. Right now, people say I use the car, my commute time, hour long from Los Angeles to my office or New York to Connecticut. I'm making phone calls. Well, that's just a go-to. But once you provide these applications, you can do video conferences. You can do live trading if you're a trader. You can do a lot of those things. I think that's where car would become go to work and home place. That would be the hybrid work environment.
Yeah. So, Mr. Paliwal, just sticking to the interior, earlier you talked about looking at more bespoke interiors. And I think the sense I get is the interior is becoming more and more important because with EVs, the powertrain is democratized. It's quite the secret sauce of the battery. It's not like ICE engine where the powertrain really had its own character and appeal. Coming to the interiors, you spoke about bespoke interiors. Is this something which is exciting because with a skateboard, you have so much more flexibility now. You don't have, a powertrain intrusion or transmission tunnel, no transmission, hump to worry about, that sort of thing. So is that really going to be one of the big battlegrounds, interior differentiation?
I believe so. Look, we as a tier ones are helping car companies to differentiate how they sell because otherwise a lot of cars look alike the same. Look, the big displays, the big digital cockpit, the big e-powertrain or powertrain, as you said, that's a ticket to the dance floor. They're democratized. So how do you differentiate car? Differentiate with your safety secured connectivity. You differentiate with a bespoke interior. So let me give you a little bit more insight. We almost were ready to launch a proof of concept car last year at Beijing Automotive Show. And hopefully we'll do that very soon in the next few months. We want to show translucent skin in the car where you have the low lit, but either they're triggered by touch or by voice and personalized voice. We will also have MEM-based microphones and speakers embedded in the skin of the car. So wherever you are, you can hear exactly, you are talking to someone like microphone is in front of you, and you can have your own audio curtain around. You do not need plexiglass between driver and the passenger. Generally, condition in India, more expensive the car, you have a driver.
That's
driver
right.
Having the fun of the great car, you're sitting in the back. What do you have? So I cannot even make confidential call today unless I have an ugly looking plexiglass. So we're solving that with MEM-based microphones, MEM-based speakers embedded in the skin, and providing the flexibility of me swelling my seat around to do whatever I want to do, whichever screen I want to work with, including e-gaming, e-sports, trading, watching movies, or watching live games coming from wherever they happen to be. So I think that would be the new interior. That's a smart interior. This will have a unique personalized lighting, personalized sensors,
literally a living room
personalized security.
Yeah. Wow, that's really fascinating. So literally like a living room on wheels, and I think clearly looking at the point that you're having even swiveling seats, obviously from a safety point of view, that would have to be factored in from a crash point of view. But I think that really, so you are expecting some real game changing or revolutionary, let's say, innovations within the cabin in the coming years.
So initially, Hormaz, if I may say so, since I mentioned earlier, the level 0, 1, and 2, that's not fully autonomous. So driver will not have all of that, what we just talked. This will be applicable to everybody else. The passenger, the people in the back. If you have an SUV, you've got a living room, you've got a family room, you've got an office on the wheel. You're absolutely right. That's something we're designing. And I think that's what will create the new excitement to get in the car or in vehicles to have my time. It's called my time. I can do thinking, I can do work without going to office, without sitting in a home when I'm getting disrupted. So I think that is something we are working together with 3 or 4 large OEMs, and there's a lot of interest in bespoke interior of future.
Well, I think you can coin a new term, WFC, which is work from car, probably after this. So yeah. So, but anyway, Mr. Paliwal, shifting tack, I want to come specifically to the Indian market, the importance of the Indian market. What is your plans over here, future expansion, growth? So, if you could just tell us what your India plans are.
Well, first of all, India is extremely significant. And frankly, it comes across like everybody's saying that, rightly so. If any CEO or chairman of any company, global company, does not look at India very seriously, they're missing out. They have a blind corner, in my opinion. And I've been an India bull for a long time, back in the days when I was chairman of ABB India, and then Harman and what have you. So India is core not only as an end market, but it's also an incredible R&D innovation mind center for us. Recently, Hormaz, I coined a term. People talk about, or I talked about, high-cost countries and best-cost countries. People think we go to India for cost. I say, no, we don't go to India for cost arbitrage. We go to India for brain arbitrage. We go to India for speed arbitrage. We go to India for hunger arbitrage. We go to India for combination of these three: the humility, the hunger, the innovation, the speed, which is hard to find in many parts of the world. So that's why we go to India. So like in Harman, nearly 1/3 of my software, 1/3 of workforce, but almost 90% of the software engineering was coming out of India. Same thing in my former company, ABB. I built actually the largest R&D center for the entire ABB worldwide. That was in Bangalore. Now we have 4 successful joint ventures in India, 2 for lighting, 1 for powertrain with Suzuki, Maruti, and 1 for electronic systems. And we are right now under the leadership of Ravi Talapragada, who used to work for me in Harman. Then he left to become a global leader for software for ZF, a German company. He came right back. He's now head of India, Marelli, and also he's president of our electronic software systems. So we're going to capitalize big time in pushing AMT, which is a big part in India. Automated manual transmission.
Talk a bit on AMT, because really, it's actually, how do I say, not an old technology, but it's a technology which has come back. In Europe, it was people have moved on to twin clutches, torque converters, but somehow there's been a revival of AMT in India. And just want to talk about it from a global standpoint. Is India one of the biggest AMT markets and growing? So just wanted to get your sense on that, because it started with the Maruti Celerio, and you've got your Suzuki joint venture, and obviously your AMTs have proliferated to other brands, other models, and so just want to know the how AMTs have panned out.
Yes, there is. I would not say revival, but I think AMT got a new life. Yeah. And AMT will be alive and thriving, I believe, until 2035. AMT has got a huge future. Recently, we are replacing the manual, the mechanical gearbox. Flex fuel adjustment can be done in AMT. So that's one part. That's why segment A and segment B cars are
Right.
more and more turning towards AMT.
And
To number two,
you said up to 2035, you see AMTs, having a kind of a potential, a market and, a demand.
yeah, see, as long as you've got ICE, internal combustion powertrain, which I believe until 2035, powertrain is not going anywhere. It's a gas guzzler community. People like instant gratification. People like the smell of gasoline. Listen, I'm an EV guy, and I would like to see more EV coming in. At the same time, we have to be practical. So to answer your question, AMT is alive, and there is a revival in segment A, segment B. And also to come back to India, India is a huge market. 50% of our world market, we have worldwide. But India is actually almost 75, 80% market share of AMT is with Marelli. And I'm very happy that the way it's launched, it was only 1% in 2014. I remind myself and to you, and now it has grown so rapidly. We are actually in discussion with all automotive manufacturers in India. In fact, I'm meeting Mahindras and Tata and Maruti all in my trip coming up. So, and back to India, Hormazd, if I may just close it out on that. We are also working in India on some breakthrough technology solutions, particularly in electronics, looking at the regional market. A lot of collaboration between Japan and India, which we will drive out of Japan, always pushing the envelope. But more software work would be done out of India, and test market would be Japan. So that's all happening. Bangalore.
Can I press you on what areas of electronics or what products you would be looking at? Sounds quite exciting.
Yeah, so electronics would be electronic architecture.
Right. So
right now we have 70
E&E architecture, the full, let's say, I think people are, I don't know, it's Ethernet. People are going to, I think, you went from the normal CAN bus to people are going to flex ray, but I think Ethernet is the way forward, really fast data speeds. Are you all working on those architectures?
Absolutely. You have to, because that's what car companies' first question is. What is your strategy on electronic architecture? So you need to, and I'm totally with you. The CAN served us very well for last 20 years, but CAN is not future. You're talking about gigabyte of speed with 5G. To take full advantage, we need to adapt and adopt the fastest Ethernet technology. At the same time, we need to have a very clear strategy that there's a one gateway, and through that gateway, you can have a handshake with various subsystems. Right now, we have 80, 90 subsystems. They all have different technology, very arcane architecture, software gateways. We are coming up with a strategy to propose. Only new car companies would be able to switch faster, in my opinion.
That's
the traditional car companies would have transition approach, but that's fine.
I was just coming to that because I think the problem is the legacy platforms are not, you can't retrofit the new E&E architectures on that. So do you think actually that's really the biggest stumbling block is the old architectures? I mean, Volkswagen, for example, they had to move away from their PQ25 and MQBA primarily to take more up-to-date E&E architecture, electronics architecture. So do you think this is going to be a challenge for some of the legacy manufacturers who really have old platforms or legacy platforms?
As always, automotive industry has lagged the development in other industries because of those concerns. That complete upgrade from the old architecture to the new, first of all, is very expensive. Second, they were just not ready to do it. And safety requirement and all of those. So I think, this is my view, the newest entrant in the car industry, there are a lot of Chinese car companies who are making phenomenal car, by the way. They are giving challenge to American, Japanese, and European car companies. They'll be the first one to embrace and adopt the new electronic architecture. I believe Indian companies have a lot more risk tolerance and appetite to switch on.
Clearly, I think the platform limitation often is not, anything but the adoption of a new electric architecture. You can even upgrade the safety and let it meet the latest safety requirements and emissions and all that. But it's just, I think this, from what I understand, is a huge stumbling block because this is really the new architecture on which, cars need to be built, which is your electric and electronic architecture.
Hermes, if I may, first of all, totally agree with what you said. Unless you have the new electronic architecture adopted, you will not be able to take advantage of all the development in the applications around you.
And
All
especially with
like
5G
literally.
coming to India now, with 5G in India now, I mean, you need it yeah, as soon as possible.
So in my opinion, and again, it's my opinion, we may not shift all the car models overnight. We might launch one or two car models and very clearly say, look, this is our new solution in the industry. This is what it gives you. It gives you iPhone or Samsung phone update capability on a daily basis. It mimics you, who you are, what your environment is, what's your productivity, who you want it to be. So that's what we will launch. And once people start to experience, that will give us opportunity to go back and take a leap of faith to upgrade the arcane old architecture. But it's not going to happen in 5 years.
Or do you think that's becoming a bit commoditized, or is there innovation possible in that area as well?
So Hermes, always in everything, there will be standard lights, they will be commoditized, it will be just a cost race. And that's something I don't personally believe in. We need to innovate. We're innovating lights, which are smart lights, million pixel in LED lighting, which can give us the resolution all the way to the half miles from me to see exactly what's happening. Real estate is where we need to do a lot more innovation, and some tuck-in acquisitions might be on the road as well for some of the technology so that we bring in and scale it. There are a lot of good startups in Europe or in Israel or other places, but they don't have scale. And,
Right.
And we're using some of those technologies. So in lighting, to answer you, we will have next generation smart lights, which will give us the precision and vision processing, what other LiDAR, radar, externally people are trying to use as an ADAS, we will have integrated in our lighting module. We will give standard applications to car companies. That's what will differentiate, I believe, Marelli lighting. Now,
Right.
this is a cost game too. We have to have a scale. This
Right.
is we are give and take. We are number one or number two, depending on which car company you talk to.
Right.
We are very fortunate that we are supplying very high-end cars, but we need to also scale it so that mid-level cars can also take advantage of our lights, but also our smart electronics and software, which will, by the way, sit on the electronic architecture we talked about.
Right. Mr. Paliwal, you raised a very interesting point, which is the cost game. And I want to come to India on this. Just wanted your sense from all the global markets. Is India one with the most difficult cost structure? A lot of OEMs complain that this is a very difficult market to have good margins. It's always this high volume, low margin kind of game, just given the structure of the market. Look, majority of our cars are under 10 lakhs. So clearly, your the pricing will obviously have to be accordingly, and your cost structure as well. So just simple question, is India one of the toughest markets in the world as far as, getting the cost structure right?
I smile. That means yes. It is toughest market. And believe me, you cannot take India out of me. I'm a Marwari. I understand the cost. I understand people in India are the most savvy buyers.
Yeah.
They are going to say, if I'm going to give extra 1 lakh, extra 5 lakhs, what am I getting for it?
Correct.
That's the game. And they're very digitally savvy too. They have a complete research done. What car is being sold in China and in Europe and America, what feature functionality. And I know we have artificial pricing, inflation because of the duties, what have you. That's why localization is extremely important. So you're right. We need to use Indian ingenuity. We need to design to cost. Rather than look, I'm a big fan, and my colleagues in Germany, France, Europe, UK, US, they know it. I say, listen, you have experience, but you have somehow blinded yourself from thinking, how do I design to cost? Exactly. I say, give the same architecture you've developed, give it to Indian engineers or Chinese engineers and ask them, take 50% cost out, same performance. Believe it or not, I've done that at least a dozen times successfully. Right in Harman, we launched mid-segment, fully modular, integrated infotainment system that was designed, software was done in Bangalore, hardware was done in China. We had half the cost full feature functionality. Our margins went up. It was a huge success worldwide. That's what we intend to do. Bring a lot of technology from Italy, Japan, and United States and Germany into India, into China, have them take the cost out. You can call it reverse engineering, but I have no fear of saying that reverse engineering is smart engineering.
Right.
That is, if that's going to give me cost advantage without losing my feature functionality, I love it. And by the way, that's not just for China and India. I'm going to take that solution, apply that worldwide. So I've done that in ABB, I've done that in Harman, and we're going to do that. That puts India back in the center again. Ravi and his team, they have to work very closely with Italian, Japanese, German, American colleagues to take their technology and simplify take the cost out, add more feature functionality. I'm not looking bells and whistles. I'm talking real features, software-defined features. So a lot of work will happen. Today, we have almost 400 software engineers in Bangalore and in Delhi area. I've asked Ravi, by 2024, I need to have at least 1,600 software engineers on our own. In addition, we are working with our partners, Tech Mahindra. We work with them too, because there's a lot of competence and IP they have. They can actually move us faster.
Wanted your kind of overview on how the semiconductor problem or the chip problem is panning out. This whole issue, which fundamentally boils down to mature nodes, which is 40 nanometers, and everyone moving to 7 nanometers, the more advanced nodes, where clearly there is a lot more capacity than the older ones. And whether that's going to change your strategy in the way you design some of your products as well, and what cost implications that would have. So yeah, just this I think this crisis has taught everyone to be very innovative as well.
Hormazd, again, not surprising. You're covering a lot of ground, and your knowledge in each of these segments is pretty profound. So I may not add a whole lot more to what you already know, but let me tell you, I'm in a constant communication with Rich Templeton of TI. I've known him for plus 20 years. Sanjay Mehrotra, very dear friend. We were just doing wine tasting in Bordeaux not too long ago. I learned from him. I said, Sanjay, when are you going to bring a lot more memory, next generation memory applications and others, microcontrollers? That's not what they do, but microcontrollers are coming from China. So I think in near term, we have three different things to talk about. One, when are we going to have enough supply chain, so that we have access to all what we need, so we can start making? There's a huge pent-up demand. We're sitting with a lot of backlog. We cannot make. Car companies want more from us, but we don't have enough chips or microcontrollers. So that problem, I don't think it's solved yet. A lot of capacity has been planned. I think it's coming live.
Is it more for the mature nodes, or is it across the board?
It's across the board, but talking purely automotive. I'm not talking smart appliances. I'm not talking mobile, I think, or even the crypto minings. A lot of those things have sucked up a lot of demand. But purely for automotive, automotive is not using the most modern 7 nanometer or 9 nanometer. We're still kind of a mid technology, but a lot of microcontrollers. So I think those, in my opinion, we are well into end of first quarter 2023 before we can say we are declare we don't have a problem. And I'm very honest, that's something I'm listening to our auto suppliers, auto company or car makers, and that's how I get it. That's number one. Number two, this is also a inflection point where semiconductor and memory suppliers are looking at how can they play a bigger role in new electronic architecture, which will eliminate 70, 80 nodes in a car into maybe a dozen or so nodes, very powerful, multitasking, multi-modular approach here. And you can talk about thin client and cloud, which will also play a bigger role, which means large cloud-based data centers will do a lot of processing, which will minimize, if you have a decent distribution. I'm a control engineer. Before I came to automotive, I used to do project management, control tuning of nuclear power plant, large pharmaceutical, large chemical gas refineries, a lot of those things. Their distributed triple redundant architecture was invented a long time ago, and it has moved on further. I think we need to have a distributed architecture in car, which will allow us to have 3 or 4 strong, very powerful SoCs to do bulk of the processing and a lot of handshaking with the cloud. That would be part of the new electronic architecture. And finally, semiconductor suppliers have learned a lot. They're big guys. They never paid attention to automotive needs. They actually always said, what we have, take it and run with it. I think there's a lot of development to give us what the really future needs of car industries are.
Fantastic. And, just to wind down, the electrifications, everyone's has to be in that race. Otherwise, you're not in the game. Just focus on pure electrification. Are there any products from Marelli we can expect, or is it again just going to be in the broader systems of E&E, interior, that sort of thing, or something specific from new tech for EV products?
Yeah. So as I said in my opening comment, that we have invested in e-motors, e-axle, in power management, working very closely with car companies as well as battery manufacturers. We are looking at what SK is doing, what Samsung is doing, what CATL is doing, Panasonic, working very closely with them. And also a few new startups for battery management. So many of those areas we've invested. At the same time, Hormazd, it's no secret, there are 20 suppliers in electrification. You think all 20 will survive?
Yeah,
I doubt it. Is Marelli going to be in one of the top 3 in electrification? I'm not so sure whether I really want that. I would rather put our money making all our products and solutions agnostic to either whether you have an EV or non-EV, doesn't matter.
Right.
That means back to again having smart lighting and sensing technology, smart software electronic architecture, and ECUs and telematics and clusters and body domain controllers of the next generation, and having bespoke interior. Those are the 3 very important core technology, core domain.
Focusing on your strength, basically. Yeah.
That's it. Those are the strengths of Marelli. I want to double down. We will play in powertrain. We will play in electrification. But that is really to be, call it me too. I mean, we are not me too in powertrain. When AMT, we are unique. In fact, our GDI injectors, there's no company who can develop more than has a solution for 500 bar. We have gone up to 1,000 bar. But so we are actually go-to technology company for GDI and powertrain. But to be the leader in the top 3 or 4 in e-powertrain will take billions of dollars of investment. Again, as a Marwari, as an Indian mindset person, I would rather invest my billions in the areas where I can grow profitability of this company and also grow the market share.
But, I just want to press you on one thing. You talked about your GDI systems going to 1,000 bar, obviously very good for emissions. You don't need GPFs and stuff like that when you have very high pressures. What's your strategy on investment in ICE? Because a lot of people that's done. Everything's going to be in EVs because a lot of OEMs think that way. And obviously your fortunes are also linked to OEMs. What's the investment in ICE going forward? Is there going to be really big, fresh investment, or is it just kind of, incremental to what's already been developed?
I think I would like to call it incremental. There will not be much exponential innovation in that. We have done a lot of investment already in GDI and flex fuel, the CAF4 and Bharat System 6 compliance. So I think what you will expect from us, we are seriously looking at, should we have local manufacturing of AMT, including our powertrain and GDI in India? And that's something I'll be discussing with the decision authorities of the large OEMs during my upcoming visit. In fact, our president of powertrain, who is really expert in this, would be traveling with me to meet with some of these customers. So GDI, back to GDI, 1,000 bar may not be applicable to India, but it is a technology we wanted to show proof point that once you do that, and you also do the replace the mechanical gearbox with electro-hydraulic units and many other technologies, and pair that with next generation catalytic converters, we call it GTS, Green Technology Systems, and thermal systems. I think we're bringing a lot to the table here for the car companies to use for next 15, 17 years. At the same time, making all the product suite in Marelli totally agnostic, whether it's a EV or CG, ICE.
And last question, Mr. Paliwal, I just want to go all the way back to the humble AMT transmission. You spoke a lot about that. You believe it's got a lot of potential. You've spoken about even localizing it to a great degree over here. But looking at the way the market is moving to SUVs and slightly bigger SUVs, it seems that AMTs, it kind of hits a ceiling. Beyond that, people move to a different kind of technology. I mean, without meaning to deride it, but AMT is really the poor man's automatic, as it's viewed, without meaning to be disrespectful. So it seems there's a limitation of this technology to the budget end of the market, which actually isn't growing that much. It's the bigger SUVs and all that are going. So just given this scenario, do you think that the demand potential is also going to go up quite a bit, or do you think it'll be gradual?
So demand potential will not be as rapidly growing as EV, very clear. But what I see, last time I saw some statistics, 4 million vehicles are being produced with AMT. By 2030, it'll be 5 million. So there is a growth, but it's not an exponential growth. It's a market, but very few players are in that space who have solution. And we are the market leader in that. So we want to maintain that market position, generate a lot of cash, and create profitable business so that we can fund electronic architecture, lighting and sensing technology, bespoke interior, as well as cybersecurity, connectivity, and display units. So I think it's a combination. In OEM and in tier one business, you do not make drastic overnight changes because the industry doesn't want you to, doesn't allow you to. So I think we will face it from powertrain eventually to the e-powertrain, but that's a journey of good 15 years. So I think we'll see. And by the way, one more thing, if I may, when we say AMT, we also are developing, have already launched few places, hybrid. So you could have an e-motor as well as the AMT, and you've got a hybrid, still reducing the fuel consumption, and you're graduating people from traditional ICE, traditional AMT towards the EV. So there'll be a lot of those cars. There's a market for transient as well. So people are not going to switch straight to EV.
Are you saying you can have hybrids with AMT application in it in the future?
That is also being developed, and that's something our engineers are looking at. That would be something we'll look at for Indian market.
A strong hybrid?
You call it strong hybrid or medium hybrid? I don't know how to differentiate.
No, what I mean is a hybrid that's driven on pure electric power for a distance. That's what I mean.
Right. So you will have, then you don't need the massive battery management systems and batteries. You can have the battery and you still have the hybrid AMT. So that way is also comfort factor for many people. For a long time, a lot of drivers said, I prefer to have a hybrid so that I know I never run out of fuel. So I think a lot of those mindset issues as well to be looked at.
Clearly, I think Maruti is going to be your biggest customer on that, looking at the way they're pushing hybrid technology. So absolutely, that's very interesting. Mr. Paliwal, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. We've really run out of time. Really fascinating discussion. Glad to see all the different areas you all are working on. And that India is definitely, on your roadmap. Being an Indian, of course, it really helps that you do understand the market. Wish you all the best, and hope to see you soon sometime. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Hormazd, for being with you, and I really appreciate your knowledge and what you do. That's what keeps all of us on our toes, and we get encouraged and inspired. Thank you again.
Thank you.